Hey everyone, I'm Raisa Hashem, Research Specialist Solutions Architect here at Amazon Web Services. I wanted to introduce you to one of our customers, FrontierSI. FrontierSI is an incredible not-for-profit organisation that partner with organisations such as universities, government and the private industry in applying spatial data and analytics. They use levers like rapid technology advances and customer demand for data to provide really innovative solutions to solve some of the most pressing challenges that our customers are currently facing. So, I'd love to introduce Graeme, who's the CEO of FrontierSI. Hey Graeme, thank you so much for joining us and it's lovely to have you here.
Thanks very much for inviting me and I'm pleased to be here. So let me tell you a little bit about FrontierSI. We're an organisation that's been around for 18 years. Our first 15 years was as a cooperative research centre for spatial information. And by spatial information, I mean data that has as a location. So if you think about any sort of data like positioning data, that is location bound and can reference somewhere in time and potentially in space. So the CRC, or the Cooperative Research Centre for Spatial Information, had a fixed term, and its origins were really around the industry, government and the university sector coming together to solve problems which required a spatial element to it. At the end of that period, the partners thought that there was a lot of value in what had been created. There'd been a trust build up, there'd been a lot of spatial expertise and connection and collaboration developed and a really strong set of outcomes with impact that had been delivered, and they thought this was a great mechanism, and given the centre finish they continued as FrontierSI. So we're a partner operating model working in spatial research and innovation, which for us means working with positioning data, managing imagery data and working with all the types of foundation data that people take for granted today, like addressing data, property data, rails, railroads, all of that, and that's where we operate.
Awesome. I love hearing that, right? The inception of FrontierSI and how the journey began. Can you tell me a little bit more though about spatial? What impact and benefits are you seeing in the community?
So spatial is becoming more pervasive than ever. 10 to 15 years ago, we saw the advent of mobile phones come through, the increased use of mapping technology, and now the power of spatial is really in the hands of the consumer. It's also being really heavily used by industry. So the way people manage workflows these days and improve the way they do business really has a spatial element to it. If I think about the way we manage our assets, whether it's a utility, think about the way we mail things around and map the location of that, the way we navigate using spatial information or positioning information these days, the way we monitor our environment, the way we respond to emergencies, search and rescue, all has an improved use of spatial information these days. And let me just give you two examples of projects that we've worked on which just illustrate a little bit about how spatial information works with the incredible power of technology that we've seen really escalate in the last 5 to 10 years. So we were involved a few years ago in a project with Queensland University of Technology and the Queensland Government, which was about collecting information on the Great Barrier Reef, and it was about looking at improved coral mapping and coral health. And the way we went about that was to look at the way scuba divers, people that are on the reef, just collect photos because now photos are geolocated, and we created basically a database for that and had people submit those photos. And so we started to build a vast library which was based on both those images that were basically brought through from citizens right through to professionals. Brought that into a library. That was then used people through I guess a website to crowdsource them doing some classification, following on from what professionals had done, and then use AI to validate all that. So yeah, you actually then can produce really rapid monitoring information using crowdsourced data and having people engage with that as well and validate that. So it's a really powerful tool to build upon more traditional measures. Another example is, I talked a little bit about positioning, but when you think about how much positioning influences our lives these days, we're working with one of our key partners, Geoscience Australia, to develop technology which will improve the accuracy, integrity of position for all Australians. And this is really working with improved software and then improved data infrastructure, which allows us to drive from the GPS dot the blue dot you see on your phone these days, which is several metres, down to sub-metre, and then in some instances down to sub-decimetre or 10 centimetre accuracy. There's technology coming which in the next 4 or 5 years to 10 years will be in the hands of every Australian. The amount of applications which can be built upon that is frankly astounding. So I just think about when I stand on the corner of a traffic light and there's cars flying past me at 60 kilometres an hour. You feel pretty safe, but imagine if you're there and you're 1 metre away from that and you're in the traffic, right? You're in a bit of trouble. So I just think about how better position will enable a lot more applications, whether they be autonomous, drones delivering services, or improved weed spraying for agriculture, or improve yield in ag as well. So the benefits of spatial will flow through, and that's enabled really by the technology advances, which are anything from the hardware right through to the cloud infrastructure.
Wow, the sheer volume of data, and spatial data is everywhere. So, processing and analysing these huge volumes of data, Graeme, how does the spatial industry use AWS to help manage that?
It's a great question. I remember the days when I had a pile of 2 terabyte hard drives sitting in my office of imagery data and elevation data. Those days are gone, thankfully for me, but certainly when you're managing large piles, I'll say, or types of imagery data, there's still instances where you need to move the data around physically. What cloud has actually done is remove the number of instances when you can do that, and so cloud computing really and storage has made data, and in particular spatial data, which is very volume intensive, more accessible and more usable by everybody. So let me give you an example. Landsat data, which has been collected by the United States for 30 years, has been archived and used in specialist areas to look at the planet. It has a 30-metre resolution, so it's a medium resolution in our terms. But when you bring that into a cloud environment and look at the way it's stored, and then the compute around that global data set, you can actually look at and manage problems that are temporal as well. So, for example, you can look at change, and if you think about climate change or the management of cities or the management of coastlines or the changing coastlines, you can actually do the analysis in the cloud and build data sets which are easily usable by the research community. They're effectively analysis ready. That can be used by the research community or by the environmental community or by resources to look at the way change has occurred on the planet. So the temporal aspect of data becomes unlocked by cloud infrastructure. Another sort of example I'd point to is to say that you can then build different data sets off that. So a great example of that is if you think about a particular location on the planet, you can look over 30 years at that location and determine, did it have land cover, did it have water, what's the percentage likelihood of that, and that allows you to build a whole lot of predictive models. So cloud infrastructure really has allowed us to provide data anywhere, to compute it, to actually remove the infrastructure needed to move data around, because it's accessible to everybody. It's interoperable because you can build it to effectively to a standard that everyone can operate with. So for me, it's really enabled data to be used in a more imaginative way, and for change detection, which our industry is really strongly built on.
Awesome. And so organisationally as well, are you kind of noticing any changes in the organisational structure in the spatial industry?
So I think when I think about what cloud's doing, and my observations really, in particular in government and large industries, that we're seeing people organise around cloud. So what do I mean by that? I'm seeing that people think about how they iterate the use of data, spin up small proof of concepts that they think they can scale, that can be scaled. So we're actually seeing what I'd say is a transformation change, which is really tied to, I guess, the last 18 months that the world has experienced, and that digital shift we've seen that's really been accelerated by a pandemic. What we're seeing is people thinking about how they can work differently in teams, organise themselves around cloud environments, and really transform the way they operate as a business.
What an incredible time, right? It sounds like the spatial industry is really going through a lot of transformations at the moment. So I want to know, what happens now? What's coming in the not too distant future?
It's an exciting time, I think, for data and spatial in particular. We're seeing so many amazing technology advances. Think about the recent Mars landing and the use of the helicopter, for example, on Mars. It's just incredible, really. When I think about what's happening in space and the changes that we're seeing around space flight and the use of satellites in space, that's an enormous opportunity for the collection and acquisition of data. Really, we're going to see a lot more data observing satellites or Earth observing satellites. That means more data. We're going to see that cloud environment and that analysis-ready data environment move into space. So we'll see, rather than where we are today, with a lot of data just being downloaded and then analysed on Earth, we're actually going to start to see that happen through networks of satellites in space. So we'll see artificial intelligence, we'll see network satellites, different systems of satellites and cloud compute. And what that means for all Earth observation is that we'll have more data, more resolution, and that means we need to think about how we organise that, integrate that, and build applications across that. So it'll be more accessible to the consumer. It'll be more accessible to business, and we'll see that coming through in workflows. So I think there's going to be a fundamental change when we're from all types of sense data. Not only I've talked about space, but we can think about ground-based systems as well. That allows us to really have a data-rich environment within which to make decisions. And so I think we're going to see a big change in the way data is used, even from where we are today. So the data volumes are incredible, and for the spatial industry in particular, and I'll just draw back to a couple of examples. There's a lot of effort across Australia, across the states, right at the moment in improving the accuracy of the property data sets. So that is a foundation data sets upon which a lot of other data sets reside. So when you think about a more accurate data set, you can then overlay that more accurately with other data sets, and that gives you a really strong integration environment. If you put that in the cloud, that allows you to manage cities better, look at improved planning decisions, bring real-time data into that environment, all because everything overlays more accuracy. The cloud storage and processing environment really allow us to do that. So for me, I'm excited about the opportunities that come from when you can bring different data sets together. It's really exciting times.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us, Graeme. So yeah, what an incredible journey we're on. What an incredible time it is, and of course lots of transformations coming as well. So super excited to see what else is going to come in this space. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much everyone for joining us as well. Hope you enjoyed that session with Graeme and I, and enjoy the rest of your AWS Initiate.